I never thought I'd see the day, but the NASCAR Cup Series drivers will race at a downtown street circuit later this summer in iRacing, but it's teasing some huge real-world implications as well. How's it going, y'all? My name is Eric and welcome to Out of the Groove. I hope you enjoyed last night's return of the iRacing Pro Invitational on FS1. They raced at the Bristol Dirt Track. We'll talk about that race a little bit here in a few moments, but the focus of today's episode is the shocking bombshell NASCAR dropped yesterday afternoon. NASCAR is introducing a downtown street course to the iRacing Pro Invitational. They'll race there later this summer and are already teasing a possible real-world street course race, which is interesting because literally 2 days ago we were talking about that here on Out of the Groove, so we were ahead of the curve. I'll take it. Now that we have some more specific details to talk about, we'll discuss that historic iRacing event and what it may mean for real-world NASCAR Cup schedules in the coming years. We'll talk about all that. We're also going to talk about the Pro Invitational race from last night, but first, link is in the description, but y'all should check out the latest from the Going Intact, Coming Out Loose podcast. I talked to Bart and Chris over there, and we really just talked about my history here on YouTube, you know, how I got into the sport, what inspired me to start Out of the Groove, and really how this YouTube channel even got founded, all that great stuff and more. So if you want to hear more about me, go check out that latest issue. That's down in the description. It was a well-timed episode too, because just a couple days ago we did hit 150,000 subscribers here on this YouTube channel. That's insane. I'm not the kind of guy to celebrate every little milestone, but I do greatly appreciate all the support. Anyone who's ever watched these videos, if you've been subscribed for any amount of time, I greatly appreciate it. Now let's talk news. A lot of iRacing, but there's also some real-world implications we'll get to a little bit later in the show. This episode is brought to you by Fram. Real quick, let's talk about last night's 2021 Pro Invitational debut. William Byron, is anyone really surprised, gets the win. Tyler Reddick was in contention. Chris Buescher ran well. Some of the Rick Ware drivers like Garrett Smithley and James Davison were also in contention, but it became pretty clear that iRacing experience was more important than real-world dirt experience. William Byron led most of the laps of the feature. He won his heat race to get in. It was a great show, even though some of the heavyweights, the big names like Dale Earnhardt Jr., Chase Elliott, failed to advance past their heat races. It was still a good race. Timmy Hill, of course, the rally behind him all day leading up to the race. He drove the 2-car for Penske, ended up finishing 8th, so a solid performance for Timmy Hill. It was great because nobody took it too seriously. The FS1 booth really seemed to just have fun with it. Mike Joy, Jeff Gordon, Clint Boyer, Larry McReynolds, and Joey Logano was also in there a lot. They were just funny. They were just having fun with it. It felt like Mike Joy really just threw the script over his shoulder and just riffed for an hour and a half. And when you hear Mike Joy speaking off the cuff, it's a sight. He had a few funny sound bites last night. Larry McReynolds brought the costumes, brought the props as usual. Joey Logano was a great addition. Clint Boyer was goofy as ever. Honestly, it was Jeff Gordon who kind of felt like, I don't know, he was out of place. I think when they brought Joey Logano in as well, it almost felt like everyone kind of upstaged Jeff Gordon, but you know, he was able to kind of just stay loose and have fun with it. That's what I think you got to do with these iRacing races. The next one's not until April 21st, I believe, so we have almost a month. I think whenever they do these Pro Invitationals, you just got to get the mood right. And I thought they got the mood exactly right last night. It's all about the broadcast. It's not nearly as much about the on-track, the virtual on-track action. Mike Joy, Clint Boyer, whoever they get in the booth, they're carrying the show. It's all dependent on them, and I thought they did a good job last night, so I had fun. I encourage everyone to check out the race at Talladega when it happens. And I'll be honest, yesterday's race was not as big of a mess as I feared it would be. I thought Bristol Dirt in the virtual space where the drivers don't have the same feel of the track and the car itself, I thought it would be a disaster. It really wasn't. I thought, especially up front, some of the racing looked pretty realistic and was pretty legit. Got me a little excited, I must say, for the real-world Bristol Dirt racing this weekend. Even though I don't think you can take really anything we saw yesterday and apply it to the race on Saturday and Sunday. But anyway, today we are focusing on iRacing because, while yes, the Pro Invitational returned yesterday and that was great, it was not the biggest story of the afternoon. It was not even the biggest iRacing story of the day. Earlier in the afternoon, NASCAR dropped a bomb on us. NASCAR and iRacing announced that the Pro Invitational will race at a downtown Chicago street course race on June 2nd, aired on FS1. Take a look at some of these photos. You're telling me the folks at iRacing were able to model the entire Chicago skyline? Wow. NASCAR posted a POV look at a full lap around the virtual Chicago street course. You can see, you know, it looks like a typical typical street course, what you'd expect. Temporary looking walls, kind of narrow at times, but you got that awesome downtown city skyline that really makes this race look picturesque. According to reports, iRacing actually worked with the city of Chicago last fall to temporarily close down all those streets you see there and briefly get a rough scan of the actual streets of Chicago used for this Chicago street course virtual version. Adam Stern here has a quote from the mayor of Chicago: "I am thrilled to work with NASCAR and iRacing to showcase our great city to NASCAR fans." Now you guys saw a little bit of that onboard clip. Here's an actual map of what this layout will look like. I mean, it's simple, but I think it'll be quite effective. Goes right by that big fountain, which I remember visiting a couple years ago, last time I was in Chicago. Very pretty, and yeah, it's simple, a lot of right angles, but I think it'll be effective. I think there will be plenty of opportunities to pass at a track like this. I think it's good. I think it's solid. Again, NASCAR Cup Series drivers will race at this virtual version of the Chicago Street Course on June 2nd of this year. It's supposed to be the 5th race of the new Pro Invitational. Several drivers tweeted quite different reactions to this news. Bubba Wallace is seemingly not thrilled about the idea of a new road course being added. Chase Briscoe's already planning a detour to get some deep dish pizza. I like where his head is at. Looks like Josh Bilicki is a big fan of it, so wide variety of responses. Now let's be real for a second. As cool as it is that the NASCAR Cup Series drivers are going to race at a virtual downtown street course, underneath that facade is where the real big news is. If NASCAR is actually teasing a real world downtown Chicago street course race, that is earth-shattering news for the motorsports world. NASCAR, the southern sport that races in circles, often in the middle of nowhere, that series is going racing in Chicago, in the streets of Chicago? That's certainly not something I ever thought we would seriously be talking about, but that's of course where the conversation is shifted. NASCAR's not racing in a street course like this for no reason. They're not just doing it for the iRacing, they're doing it to bring exposure to the possibility of a real street course race, and likely they're doing it to test the waters. How are fans going to react to this? From what I've seen, most fans seem very positive about this announcement, or at least very interested, intrigued, or excited about this announcement. But I think NASCAR's doing this to really test the waters. What is fan reaction like to the possibility of a street course race? Could Chicago be the perfect destination to make a real world race like this happen sometime? Of course, with Chicagoland Speedway located about an hour or so away from downtown Chicago, with that track not being used this year, NASCAR doesn't want to leave Chicago entirely. It is the 3rd largest city in the United States. You don't want to leave that massive market. Could Chicago be the right place to do it? Could this iRacing race convince the leaders of Chicago to make this a reality? The virtual race on a street course is cool and all, but really what all of us want to know is whether or not this is going to happen in real life, if it's even possible. Well, I read a Fox Sports article, and Ben Kennedy, who's in charge of a lot of scheduling decisions at NASCAR, talked about the possibility of a real world street race down the line. Here's some of what he had to say. The impetus right now is solely that virtual event and bringing that to life on June 2nd. That's been our focus in the near term. If there's an opportunity to explore different types of venues or new markets in the future, I think there are certainly a ton of options out there, whether it's Chicago or other markets. This article was written by Bob Pockrass, and Ben Kennedy was asked about whether a real race on the streets of Chicago could be a reality in 2022, and Kennedy said, "Still a ton of work to do on the 2022 schedule. It will be a while before we start announcing anything there. We are in the preliminary stages of that, but more to come sometime this summer." So Ben Kennedy there obviously dancing around the subject a little bit, but he's not saying no. He's not saying it's impossible. Keep in mind that NASCAR and iRacing did have to work with government officials in the city of Chicago to scan their streets for this street race, so they already do have a relationship there. There's already a line of dialogue between at least NASCAR, iRacing, and the city of Chicago, so that's positive. Now it is worth noting from those quotes that Ben Kennedy does not believe Chicago is their only option for a street race. He doesn't have tunnel vision, only focused on the Windy City. No, he's willing to accept that maybe another city will be the right fit for NASCAR to race something like this. So, I've talked about how IndyCar races a few different street courses a year usually. Obviously, St. Petersburg's a big race for them. They're adding Nashville to the schedule this year. Part of the video I did earlier this week was reacting to quotes from Roger Penske talking about the possibility of more NASCAR IndyCar doubleheaders down the line. Could we see NASCAR and IndyCar double it up at a street circuit one of these upcoming years? That would be busy, that would be big, but it would also be really freaking cool. Doubling up with IndyCar might make a street race for NASCAR more feasible, because let's talk about street racing, street course racing. Street course racing's cool, but it's expensive, as you may guess. There's a reason many NASCAR tracks are located out in the suburbs or pretty far away from metropolitan areas where land's a little more plentiful, a little cheaper. Shutting down a large section of a major city is not cheap. Now, you might get some major help from a major sponsor. You might get, help from the city itself, financial support from the city itself. You probably would need that. I think NASCAR could certainly manage manage it on their own, but adding IndyCar, that'd be a pretty supercharged weekend. In my opinion, that investment would be worth it, even if it's a steep price to pay from NASCAR's perspective, or if they need to really sell sponsorship hard, or if they get help from the city. It's a worthwhile price to pay, in my opinion, because I believe bringing a real NASCAR race, not just burnouts on the Las Vegas Strip or, a parade from years ago. No, you bring an actual NASCAR competition to the streets of a major urban city. That is the definition of bringing your product to the people. NASCAR tracks right now, again, like I said, are kind of out in the middle of nowhere. Fans have to actively seek out a NASCAR race. Hey, I want to go to a NASCAR race this weekend. I got to pack my stuff. I got to commit to an hour drive to get out there. Fans have to commit to go to a NASCAR race. If you bring the race to the people, you're going to attract hardcore NASCAR fans. You'll get thousands of really hardcore, passionate NASCAR fans to show up, but you'll also attract the casual crowd. I know the casuals. Oh, it's like a curse word, like Voldemort, the casual fan. You just can't say that word. But my take is if NASCAR can reach some casual fans and perhaps convert some of them over time into hardcore fans, because very few people start out as hardcore fans. You usually start out as a casual fan, even if it's just for one weekend. You start out with a casual interest in something before you go all in and start buying the merch, going to all the events. Like it takes time to convince or convert people into hardcore fans. Going to a street race, going to a downtown city and attracting a lot of potential casuals, good chance you convert a few of those thousands of casual fans into hardcore fans. So I think it would be a worthwhile investment for NASCAR to take their product to the city streets. Is Chicago the best bet? I don't know. Chicago, it is a huge market, and NASCAR has effectively left that market this year by abandoning Chicagoland Speedway. They are racing in Wisconsin at Road America. That's just up the road across the state border a little bit, but it's not the same thing. If you could race in the downtown streets of Chicago, Chicago may not be a huge NASCAR hub. I'm not super familiar with Chicago. I've visited a few times, but I'm not hugely familiar. I do know that they have a strong sports culture there. They love their Bears, their Cubs. They have a lot of sports there. It's a sports city, I have a feeling. So you'll attract some sports fans to the NASCAR race. And again, like I said, you might convert some of them into hardcore fans. If they find a driver to latch onto, if they just are blown away by the spectacle of, 700-800 horsepower machines roaring through, city parks, like that might hook some people. I think it would. So it'd be a worthwhile investment, albeit an expensive one. Now, one concern that I'm not really talking about, even though it is a real concern, do street courses always produce great racing? No, not necessarily. Even for other series, there are some street courses that work better than others, that allow for more passing, more movement through the field than others. I don't think the current Gen 6 NASCAR Cup Series cars would run particularly well on a street course. The narrow streets, narrow turns, I don't think these current Cup cars would put on a good show. But the next gen, those who've tested it so far say it drives like a sports car, say it handles extremely well at road courses. It's been tested at the Charlotte Roval most recently and received glowing reviews from veterans Kurt Busch and Martin Truex Jr. Bigger wheels, bigger brakes, suited for road course racing. Different steering mechanism, the sequential shifter. There's a lot of things about this car that perhaps lend itself more naturally to road course or street course racing. So as Roger Penske said earlier this week, it might take a year or so for teams to feel out the next gen, figure out how agile, how dexterous this new car really is before maybe we see a street course in 2023. That was my prediction earlier in the week, and I'm sticking by it, especially with this announcement yesterday. Heck yeah, I'm sticking by it. I think NASCAR is certainly going to push for a real world street race in the next couple of years. But here, looking at that Chicago street course map again, at least for the iRacing course, it's hard to say exactly if this will work well. I think it won't be terrible, but to be honest, I don't think that's that big of a deal. Usually I think the on-track product is most important, but for a one-off potentially street course race like this, if it's a great race, that's just an added bonus. I think the point is just putting these race cars at full speed in front of fans that maybe wouldn't usually see NASCAR. Put it against the backdrop of a major downtown skyline. If the race is fantastic, that's an added bonus. But really, you're just looking for an okay race, but you just want the scenery, you want the exposure that comes with a street course race. And for a one-off street race, I'm fine with that. If it's not the most exciting race in the world, it just is what it is. I'll live with it. I just want to see NASCAR bring its product to the fans in a way that we have not seen them do maybe ever. Anyway, that's my reaction to yesterday's huge news. What do you guys think? Are you excited about the iRacing race at Chicago later this summer? Are you excited about the possibility of a real-world street course race? Let NASCAR know. Let them know in the comments right here how you feel about NASCAR potentially running a street race in the near future. I'm sure they're listening to any and all feedback at the moment, so let your thoughts be heard down in the comments below. That's all I've got for this episode. Thank you all for watching. Be sure to subscribe if you're new to the channel. We talk NASCAR news almost daily. In fact, this whole week it has been daily, so I appreciate the support. I also appreciate the tremendous support from my amazing Patreon supporters. Couldn't do this show as frequently as I do it without your support. NASCAR Weekly Podcast is on my channel tonight, live at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. I hope to see you all there. We'll be talking all things Bristol Dirt. We'll recap Atlanta as well. Going to be a lot of fun. I'll see you there. Have a great rest of your Thursday.